welcome to the World of Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Chelsey Turpening Coxsey, founder of The Way of Genius. This talk is adapted from my own book, The Way of the Insane. I walk through Jungian archetypes as I actually teach them. Not symbols borrowed from a catalog, but your own neural pathways made interactive and visible through dream state. And what happens again and again when someone finally stops running and turns to face what's pursuing them. I get into the real neuroscience underneath it too. Memory reconsolidation, neural rewiring, and why the experience itself is the mechanism, not just a nice story, wrapped around a whole lesson. So, the lecture. I want to tell you about the thing that chases you in dreams, because I don't think most people ever learn what it actually wants. Dreams show up with mystical figures, ancient beings, in all kinds of ways, sometimes playful, almost toying with you, testing what you'll notice, sometimes revealing, handing you something before you've even asked, sometimes as a straight invitation to go further, deeper into whatever's opening up, and sometimes as confrontation, something with real weight to it, an animal, a figure, something you can't quite name, closing in the distance behind you. The last one is the one most people will recognize immediately. So let's start there. Every instinct in that moment says run, wake up, get out. That instinct isn't wrong, but I want to walk you through what happens on the other side of it because it's stranger and better than almost anyone expects. So what are archetypes actually? Let me be precise about something first, because I think it gets muddied constantly. Archetypes aren't ideas to think about or symbolic categories you sort through experience into, like a fact, after the fact. They're patterns you enter through imagery, sensation, emotion, the interior environments your subconscious generates when your conscious mind loosens its grip enough to let the deeper layer of the system speak. You don't study them from outside, you meet them from within. And here's my actual stance, which I want to be honest is mine, not a settled scientific fact. I don't think these are separate symbolic characters borrowed from some Jungian catalog floating in the collective unconscious. I think they're your own neural patterns experienced directly. The same habits, the same emotional responses that run your waking life over and over. Except here, you get to meet them face to face instead of just living inside them without ever quite seeing them. This matters for a real reason, not just a philosophical one. And I want to actually walk you through it because I think it's genuinely cool once you see the parallel. All right, so here's the neural journey, running along the side, the archetypal one, step for step. A pattern that's been running with you for years, a fear response, a habitual reaction. It isn't floating free somewhere abstract. It's a specific physical pathway in your brain, one that's been walked so many times it's worn smooth. The same way a path through a forest gets worn the more it's traveled. That's a dormant archetype before you ever meet it, just a well-worn groove running quietly in the dark, shaping your reactions without your permission. Then you actually enter the encounter, vividly embodied, emotionally real, not just through thought about the safe distance. And here's where the real science gets interesting. Recalling or reactivating an old pattern that vividly doesn't just replay, it's like a recording. It actually opens up something. And there's a real, well-documented mechanism called memory reconsolidation. When an old memory or pattern gets reactivated strongly enough, it briefly becomes plastic again, genuinely editable, before it locks back down. That window doesn't just stay open long, but while it's open, new information can actually integrate into the old pattern, permanently changing what gets sorted when it restabilizes. That's the neuroscience underneath turning around and facing what's chasing you. Now, you're not just being brave for the sake of it. You're catching the pathway in the one window where it's actually able to change, giving it something new to integrate before it closes back up. And then it does close back up. It restabilizes, reconsolidates, locks the groove back in. Except for now, it's carrying something different than it has been carrying before. you turned around. That's the phoenix moment, translated into biology. Not a metaphor sitting next to the science, but the actual mechanism the metaphor is describing. And I want to be honest about the edges of this. Nobody put a person in a scatter mid-archetypal dream encounter and watched this exact process light up in real time. I'm drawing a genuine, educated parallel between well-established memory research and what this practice seems to do, not reporting a study that's already been run. But the parallel is real enough and precise enough that I think it's worth taking seriously rather than just filling under a nice metaphor. I actually think of archetypes as neural attractors, patterns encoded deeply enough in the architecture of consciousness that they organize experience across every scale, personal all the way up to something closer to universal even. Picture your own self as golden lines running through you, each one carrying a story, experience, pattern, and a habit, all woven into one living tapestry. Archetypes tend those lines almost like gardeners, not controlling them, just shaping which pathways deepen and which stay quiet. Neural attractors and pathway makers at the same time. So sit with that for a second, because I think it's generally awe-inducing once it lands. You're not just meeting a symbol, you're witnessing your own neurons. The golden weave you're standing inside in that moment is your own mind, made visible to itself through imagery. And the shape that weaves and takes, it's different for everybody. Some meet the timeless one figures. Some meet the timeless ones, figures that seem to stand outside of ordinary time altogether, ancient in a way that has nothing to do with age, revealing something to the ego or even challenging it directly. Some meet what pursues them in fear, the chase we already walked through. Some meet angels, some meet demons, some meet something that reads as God even, or as their own higher self. Close enough to the same thing that the distinction barely matters in the moment. All of it belongs to the same territory. Internal, your own architecture lighting up in whatever form it chooses to take. I want to be precise about that scope because there's a whole separate field of experience, the out-of-body work. That's generally its own conversation and for another time. This isn't that conversation. This is entirely internal. The weave never leaves you. You're just finally looking at it directly within yourself first. Your personal wound and the myth it happens to mirror. Your neural pathway and the much larger figure it's somehow always expressing. You don't need to resolve that and what that means philosophically. You just need to notice it's there, the same pattern, showing up at completely different sizes. Once you've actually felt it from the inside instead of only reading about it. So, let's get to the chase. Here's what this actually can feel like, because I don't want to leave it just abstract. Sometimes it's an animal, teeth, weight, the specific ancient tear of being chased by something faster than you, something that catches you, and in the dream actually tears you apart. That's real dream material. People have this dream all the time. And here's the part almost nobody tells you until they lived it. You don't wake up in horror. You wake up on the other side of something, a phoenix moment, that specific disorientating realization that you were just torn to pieces and somehow you're not dead. Something in you is still standing, and it is not the same something that got caught. So turning around. The instinct is to always run. That's completely valid. You're never required to do anything else. But here's what I've watched happen again and again in people who eventually got curious enough to try to do something different. Just stop. Turn around. Let the thing reach you. Let the animal close the distance. Not because you have to. What happens next isn't always the same thing either. Sometimes it does actually stop. There's a real moment together, or something closer to recognition, connection, or meeting whatever it's carrying about your own identity. Sometimes it doesn't stop at all, and the transformation happens anyway, right through the pain or the emotion, positive or negative. because whatever's showing up, it seems to know exactly what dose you actually need, even when the dose doesn't feel gentle in the moment. And this is where I think we get genuinely lucky having this kind of brain we have. And thank God for metacognition minds, because the part of you that can witness all of this happening and actually see the shape of the process while you're still inside it. Even when the transformation comes through something as heavy as dying inside the dream, it can still be peaceful. Not because the content is soft, because you're finally awake enough inside your own experience to recognize what's actually occurring instead of just being swept through it. Either way, whether it stops or whether the transformation moves through you anyway, what it wanted was to never simply terrify you. It wanted to be met, integrated, and in that actual moment of contact, not after in the moment itself. Something happens, I think, that is worth taking seriously. The fear doesn't get suppressed or managed. It transforms right there into something else. Clarity, a kind of power that arrives as a felt shift in your own architecture, not as a thought you reasoned your way toward. Whatever the figure was carrying, it likely wasn't trying to destroy you. It was carrying something back to you that got locked away a long time ago. Energy that got repressed because it was deemed unacceptable somewhere along the way. A part of you that your fully integrated self actually requires and cannot access while it stays in the dark. So, you are not the audience of your own inner life. You're not the analysis standing outside it either, cataloging what appears from a safe distance. You're inside your own myth, moving through it, and it's been waiting, not for you to understand it from the outside, but to finally walk all the way in.